It's going.
All right, thank you. All right, I think our first order of business is the approval of the minutes from April 17th. Do we need to vote on that? No?
Do you usually vote, Stacy?
We just have to have someone accept the minutes as submitted, and then a second.
Okay.
I second.
And who accepted it?
Annette
can-
Scully.
Okay.
I second, Kim.
Okay. So I can say that I approve the minutes as written.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
can someone tell me how to mute myself? I'm not familiar with Teams, and so I've been trying to figure out how to mute myself so I'm not disturbing the meeting.
If you look up at the top of your black screen where we all are, there's going to be an MIC with a microphone. If you
Yeah.
click on that, it should mute you.
Thank you. It gave me the drop-down list before as opposed to just click on it. Thank you.
All right. And our next item is parent guardian caregiver presentation by Krista.
Oh. By Krista Oh, that is perfectly fine.
That's right. I should be ashamed of myself. I was a Bizikursky, so I don't know what happened there.
Well, thank you. Do you want me to just jump right in, get right started?
That would be very cool. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. So hi, everyone. My name is Krista Ostaszewski, which is why it's a hard last name, so I don't fault anyone when they can't pronounce it. Absolutely. So I oversee the DDS waivers. I'm the health management administrator in central office. I'm really excited to be here today to talk very briefly about a new program that we recently rolled out. We are providing a little bit of an overview on this program also during the commissioners forums that he's hosting. So he had one this afternoon, and then he also has a few scheduled for next week. So I'm going to give you guys like a little sneak peek at what I'm expanding and what the expanded presentation looks like for the commissioners forum. I'm going to talk through it, but I'm happy to provide additional information. And I'm happy to also talk with any families individually if they're interested in learning more about the program. So we are really excited because as of May 1st, DDS has been has essentially been approved and is now implementing a new program that allows us to compensate legal guardians and parents of school-age children that are providing certain supports through our waivers. This is a new program for DDS. This is a new program for the state. So we are really looking forward to learning from each other and are really looking forward to having this program grow. But it is new for us. So it absolutely is something that we're getting a handle on. We're training case managers. We're working through challenges as they come up because this is new and it's new for a lot of the folks that we're working with. This program started last year when the legislature required DDS to amend our waivers to allow legal guardians and parents of school-age children to provide supports through the DDS waivers and be compensated for certain supports. So DDS was mandated to move in this direction. It is something that several other states have already moved toward. What we learned during the pandemic is that the ability for family to provide support is a good option, and states should explore that option. So DDS did move forward with amending our waivers. and we received approval from our waivers, and we officially rolled out the program as of May 1st. Now, the program allows legal guardians and parents of school-age children to provide certain supports under the waiver. There are only 5 supports that we were able to amend and allow legal guardians and parents of school-age children to provide. And that's because CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services that oversee all of Medicaid nationally, said that the services could only be related to personal care. So DDS had to look at all of our supports and services and decide which ones provide personal care and which ones, therefore, legal guardians and parents of school-age children could provide. So it was important that we went through that process. I'm going to actually read you the 5 services that legal guardians and parents of school-age children are able to provide and be compensated for. It's individualized home support, IHS, respite, individualized day supports, personal supports, and senior supports. Those are the supports within our waivers that have a personal care component. So you're probably thinking, okay, if a parent or a school-age child is interested in providing support and being compensated for that support, what is the process? Great question, right? So the department has taken the approach that this new program is going to be offered as another opportunity for services to be delivered. Right? So when a person comes into DDS, there's many different services that can be provided, and there's options in how those services can be provided. This new program is going to be another option for services. So a person can receive, for instance, IHS support through a private provider or from a direct support professional that they hire. And now we can say that they can also receive that support through a legal guardian or a parent of a school-age child. If a legal guardian or a parent of a school-age child is interested in moving forward with providing supports and being compensated, the first step is talking with your case manager. That's the first step, talking with your case manager. The case manager will talk through what the support and service is that you're interested in providing, and what the steps are for moving in this direction. If you're a legal guardian looking to provide supports and services, there is no additional criteria that must be met. It's essentially a conversation with the case manager and a conversation with the team. And if everyone agrees that this is moving in a good direction, the legal guardian then has to enroll and be qualified as a direct support professional. And then they can begin to provide supports. If you're a parent of a school-age child, however, there is one qualifying criteria that must be met. And this qualifying criteria is a requirement that came down from CMS, right? The authority of Medicaid. That requirement was that the support or service that has to be provided by a parent has to be considered extraordinary. It has to be considered extraordinary care. CMS's concern is they did not want to compensate parents of school-age children for supports that they should be providing to any child at that same age. So we have a requirement that we have to confirm that the support being provided by the parent of the school-age child is considered, extraordinary. So the way DDS is going to do that is we are requiring that parents of school-age children and their loved one go through an age dependency assessment form. Essentially, it's a form with questions that really dives into the support that the parent is looking to provide. What we have to do is verify that that service and that support is considered extraordinary. So there's questions. How old is your loved one? What do they need support on? It's a relatively simple assessment form, but it is something that several other states have implemented and found to be successful in determining extraordinary care. So that really is the only criteria associated with this program, right? If you're a parent of a school-age child looking to provide support and be compensated for support, you need to do the age dependency assessment form. If you're a legal guardian looking to provide supports to an adult, there is no additional requirement. It's just the team has to have a discussion, and we need to make sure that everyone is in agreement. The state is required to assure that all waiver services are provided in the best interest of the individual. So that's why a case management team discussion is incredibly important. Everyone has to agree this is within the best interest for the individual. If there's not agreement, then there's some steps and discussions that can be had, but the state has to verify that the support and service is within the best interest of the individual. So that's why it's important to have that conversation. I see there's a hand up, so I'll stop chatting. Susan, I think that's who has their hand up. Is that correct?
Yes, that is me.
Hi,
I
Susan.
have two concerns.
Okay.
And I'd love to know how DDS is planning on doing this. One, you have the case manager right now set up as a gatekeeper and as a person who had, I'm just going to use the word a sadistic case manager. I think that you guys need to come up with a way for that information to get to clients that does not go through the case manager. It's really important that people who need these services, if they have an insufficient case manager in any way, that they are not denied these services because their case manager did not tell them about it. So that's the first thing. And two, what is the condition where the support is ordinary, but the child is extraordinary?
So these are both great questions. For the first question around the case manager being a gatekeeper, first, I'm sorry to hear about your experience with your case manager. I hope that was addressed, and I hope that you're moving on to a better arrangement. So we are absolutely not holding the case manager with unilateral power around this program. We are doing everything we can to get this information out to all families. And yes, the first request, right, does go to the case manager, but there are absolutely opportunities to work with other staff if a family doesn't feel like the case manager is listening, or the case manager is being responsive, or the case manager is familiar enough with the program. I've had a few families reach out to me directly to say, my case manager isn't being responsive about this situation, right? And we're able to work through it, and we're able to bring in management, and we're able to talk through appropriate next steps. What I will say is this is absolutely a new program. Case managers were just trained, and it's a learning experience for us all. So I hope in the situations where families don't feel like their case manager is being responsive on this, it is something that we are going to continue to work through and are going to continue to educate our case managers on. But if families feel like they're not getting the response that they need or deserve from a case manager, what I would recommend is going to the supervisor, going to the regional leadership, coming to me on this program. It is absolutely something where we're going to be approaching it from an all hands on deck approach.
That needs to be somewhere on DDS's website.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Well, that is a really good reminder to me. So we have a working group right now that is putting together a forward-facing, family-friendly guide on this program. The intent of the guide is to get information out to families directly. It will be posted on the website. It will be provided in forums. We want to make sure that it is accessible to the public. So we've got a group that's putting that together right now. The plan is once that group is completed and has a draft of that of the guide, we also have a family group that meets regularly that is going to do a review of the guide as well. So we want to make sure, right, that not only are DDS staff working to put this together, but that obviously families who are going to utilize it see it and are able to provide feedback. We were hoping that that guide was going to be out when we rolled out the program on May 1st, but unfortunately we were working with a really condensed time frame and we just were not able to do that. The time frame we have for the guide is that there should be a draft in my inbox within the next week or two. So we are hopeful that by the end of the month, that guide will be up on the website and we'll be able to offer it to families. I'll also say, Susan, I'm doing a much more detailed presentation for the Commissioners' Family Forums. I mentioned this at the beginning. The family forums are open to the public. We want to get the information out. So we did a forum this afternoon that was open to the public, and I believe we have at least two more scheduled for next week. And I have about 10 minutes. I may have stretched it to 15 minutes where I do a presentation and a discussion on this topic. The second question that you had, Susan, I think was about what if the child is extraordinary, but the care it is considered average. And I think that that's a really good point. So there absolutely is a portion of the assessment form that assesses the individual's needs, right? What do the medical complexities look like? What are the behavioral complexities look like? Those absolutely play a part into determining if care needed is considered extraordinary. So we really took a relatively expansive view on how extraordinary care is defined under CMS. So I'm hopeful that the assessment form is really going to capture when the support necessary is due to the individual's disability or medical complexity or behavioral complexity. If we find that it's not evaluating folks appropriately, we will absolutely take it back and refine it. Again, this is new for us all. So we looked at how other states approached it. We put together an assessment form. We talked to other states about this process. And we're hopeful that we captured it appropriately, but we absolutely will do ongoing evaluations once we're really in the weeds with things. Thank you. Thank you very much. Other questions? Tammy? Oh, is that?
Yes, I have a couple questions also. One, when I did this during the pandemic through Appendix K, the money wasn't taxed. Is that going to be the same thing at this point, or?
So Tammy, yeah, no, that's a great question. So the flexibility under Appendix K was different than what we're rolling out now. Appendix K, for those that aren't familiar, was flexibility that was allowed by CMS, again, the national entity that oversees Medicaid during the public health emergency. So there was a lot of flexibility that happened under Appendix K. Appendix K no longer exists. The public health emergency has technically ended. So this process looks a little bit different under the waivers. So to your point, Tammy, if a legal guardian or a parent of a school-aged child is looking to provide supports and be compensated for those supports, they have to enroll and be qualified as a direct support professional. So that means they absolutely will have wages. They will be able to negotiate wages with their EOR. They also will be afforded the rights that are offered to any other direct support professional under the collective bargaining agreement. So what that means is that there's a minimum wage for direct support professionals. There is the ability to receive paid time off, benefits associated, but it is wages, and those wages are taxable. So I hope that's helpful, Tammy, in yes. Responding.
That was one thing. And the other thing is, I did talk to my daughter's case manager about this already. And what he was mentioning that you didn't mention was, besides being a guardian, you couldn't be the employer of record. You couldn't be, I forgot what the other, because I'm not the employer of record, but I'm the
Representative?
representative. Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. So,
yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. No, that's a really great point. So there is a component of the program specific around the role of an employer of record. We are not able to pay employers of record if they stay in their role as an employer of record. It becomes a conflict of interest, and our waivers do not allow it. So if you're an employer of record, you approve and sign timesheets. But if you're a direct support professional, that means you'd be approving and signing off on your own timesheets. It becomes incredibly problematic. So in our waivers, it actually prohibits an employer of record from being a paid employee in any way if they maintain their role as an employer of record. So unfortunately, that is prohibited. We do have individuals, however, that have the role of a representative, right? And the representative was called prior the sponsoring person. So it's essentially the person that helps the employer of record. So you're not the employer of record, you don't hold the EIN, but you do assist the employer of record, and you may have the ability to sign off on timesheets. Generally, we are prohibiting the representative from also being a paid caregiver. There are, however, situations where we will be able to look into that a little bit more. So Tammy, depending on your role and responsibility, I'd be happy to have a conversation with your case manager just about some options there. We do have to look into it. The waiver is explicit on when it's allowable and when it's not allowable. So we will have to look into it a little bit. EORs, absolutely prohibited, unfortunately. Representatives, we can maybe take a look at to see what options may be available. Generally, it's prohibited. But if there's some questions and some options, we can work through them. Hopefully that's helpful.
That is just confusing me a bit, because I have the EIN from what I understand when we went through all the paperwork, but they insisted my daughter's the employer of record. So I'm not employer of record, but it's under my EIN.
We may have to look into that, because the EIN holder is the employer of record. So if you have the EIN, then technically. All right, so I am happy if, I'm not sure if Stacy has your contact information. I'm assuming she does. I would be happy to have a conversation with your case manager, dive into the process a little bit, take a look at what's going on, because technically the EIN holder is the employer. So if there's confusion on that, we can absolutely look into it and see what's going on there. I'm happy to help.
Okay, if we could possibly have a conversation out of this first, that would be great.
Absolutely, happy to. Stacy, if you can maybe connect us offline, that would be great. And maybe Tammy, depending on your schedule, we can have a conversation before the end of the week.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Absolutely. My friend Rick, very nice to see you.
Well, Krista, I saw the agenda for today's meeting, and due to personal reasons, I haven't been able to attend the last few months. But I said, oh, Krista's going to be there. I've got to go. So here I am. And I want to thank Tammy for asking most of my questions. I guess I have a comment, and that is in the case of a single parent who is also the guardian. Is that one of the situations that you're going to come up with some standard approach to?
Yeah, Rick, that's a really good question. And it actually came up in the forum that we had this afternoon, right? Like, if I'm the guardian and I'm the EOR and there's no other person available to be of assistance, that leaves us in a really hard position. So there are some options. And I think it's probably something that'll be really helpful for us to work through and to communicate clearly to families on, because I'm hearing a trend of this question, right? I'm hearing it today. I heard it earlier today, And again, we're learning together on this program. So we tried to anticipate, where there were going to be challenges, where there were going to be things that worked well. This is an item that I think that we have some work to do on. So I'm definitely hearing that there's a need here, and I'm definitely hearing that probably DDS is going to have to put our heads together and put out some guidance for families in the situation. So thanks, Rick. It will be absolutely something we're going to work on.
I guess a follow-up question is, what is the pay range that's permitted under this program? It's whatever DSP, an outside DSP would get. I'm not familiar with those arrangements since my son has been in SCLA for most of his life.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. So great question. You're putting me on the spot a little bit because I don't know exactly what the CBA reads for the minimum wage at this time. I think, I don't even want to say it, but I think it's right around $17 an hour as the minimum pay rate range.
Okay.
Again, it is articulated in the CBA, right, which is the collective bargaining agreement, which is the agreement between the state and the union on direct support professional wages and employment. But like all direct support professionals, there is a minimum. I'm going to say $17 is the minimum and some change, but don't quote me on that, please.
Well, that's around. That's good enough.
I believe it's around there. It's articulated in the CBA. If I can get the number quickly, I will absolutely share it. But there is a minimum. And then the ability, DSPs can then negotiate the rate from there, right? So the employer of record, the family has a budget through self-direction. Depending on what that budget looks like, there's absolutely an opportunity to negotiate the rate above the minimum. And my apologies for not knowing the minimum wage right off the top of my head. I will absolutely make sure it's shared with the group so it isn't misstated.
That's fine. It probably changes on July 1st anyway, so.
It absolutely does. The newest collective bargaining agreement, for those that are not familiar, actually has a few different iterations of increases that are happening over the next 3 years. So there is some pretty significant increases to the minimum that's occurring, which is part of the reason why I'm not exactly sure where we are in there yet, but it is articulated very clearly in the collective bargaining agreement.
Last thing is the arrangements for this, once you have approval from DDS, you do this through the fiscal intermediary, whose name escapes me now, but I know we have a new company that's doing that. So
Correct.
you would have,
yes.
you would have to register with them and do whatever their requirements are.
My apologies, I was on mute. So yes, that is correct, Rick. So we do have a new fiscal intermediary, GT Independence. So if you were approved for the program and looking to be compensated for supports being provided, you would have to enroll and be qualified as a direct support professional with our new fiscal intermediary. They will provide you with a vendor enrollment packet. They'll provide you with information on enrollment. They'll get you set up. And then you can move forward with providing the supports and being compensated for those supports.
Thank you. I'm all set. I see
Rick.
Annette has a question.
It's nice to see you. Hi, Annette.
Nice to see you too.
Hi, thank you for
Hello.
answering my question. So would this, if the individual has CFC, would this interfere with CFC? Would it take away from that budget?
So that is a great question, Annette. CFC is a program that has not adopted the ability to compensate legal guardians or parents of school-age children. So that means that the ability to do this would only be for DDS waivered supports and services. The budget for CFC shouldn't be affected because technically the support and service that the legal guardian or the parent of the school-age child is providing is already something that the individual is authorized for, right? Because again, this isn't a new support. This is just a new way of providing a support. So keep that in mind. There shouldn't be a change to the CFC budget just because a support that was provided through a direct support professional before is now being provided by a legal guardian who's a direct support professional, right? The support is still being provided. The support is still authorized. It's just who provides the support has changed. Now, if this is an absolutely new support or is a whole new DDS budget, there's always a possibility that the CFC budget may change a little bit, but that really would be on a case-by-case basis. I wish I had a more straightforward answer for you, but I hope I was able to provide at least a little bit of detail on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, Tammy.
What Annette was just saying with CFC, now my daughter's on self-directed, so that is okay, but will the money come out of the budget?
So individuals who have DDS supports and services and CFC supports and services, the supports and services are technically separate. From a family's perspective, sometimes you don't feel or see the separation, right? Because it's a direct support professional providing supports. But on the DDS and CFC end, they're two different budgets. So for this program, only DDS waivers allow supports and services now to be provided by a legal guardian. CFC doesn't allow it. That doesn't mean, however, if you move to having a legal guardian provide supports and services, that the CFC budget would be affected, right? They're two separate budgets. So there shouldn't be a huge change because again, it's only the support and the way the support and service is being provided that is changing. It's not the support that's changing, right? That's already been authorized. Your loved one's already getting IHS. All that's changing is how that IHS is being provided. I hope that's helpful.
I guess what I was asking, you said that it wouldn't come out of the CFC budget. It will come out of the budget that we use when we self-direct. We don't have CFC. It was just, that would be our general DDS budget. So
Correct.
It would come out of that. Okay.
Yes, yep. So for instance, right, if your loved one is receiving IHS from a direct support professional, that's your neighbor, this change essentially keeps the service, right? Your loved one is still going to receive IHS. What's changing is how that service is being provided, right? Because now it's going to be provided by a legal guardian. If there's a change in the wage, yes, the budget, the DDS self-direction budget would be affected, because you'd be using more money or less money, depending on the wage that's been negotiated. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Additional questions?
Ellen has her hand up.
I have a question.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, I'm Kim's daughter. I just have a question. Would what you're talking about, because we work with CFC, and would that be both? Can you work with both, or do you have to not work with both? So if I have CFC, that's what I have now. I have a CFC grant right now, and Mom, take yourself off mute, please. Tell her to take off mute.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm good.
So back me up here, Mom.
Mhm.
So we have CFC right now. I have CFC right now. So what you were talking about, we can use both.
No, CFC isn't part of this program.
Okay. That was my
So
question.
it wouldn't work for us.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Yeah, so CFC is a program that is has different authority, right? So there's Department of Social Services, which is a different agency, oversees the program. It's not through DDS Medicaid waivers. So CFC doesn't have the ability to compensate legal guardians for supports and services. DDS waivers do now, right? As of May 1st, we do. CFC does not. So the budgets, however, are separate. So there's still the ability to receive support from a legal guardian and for the legal guardian to be compensated, but it would only be for the DDS supports and services, not for the CFC supports and services. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. What I'm learning as we're starting to have more conversations with families is, I know I said this in the beginning, this is a new program for us all. So it really is a learning experience. We're learning what more information needs to come out. We're learning where we can provide additional information or be more clear or put together more direct guidance on. I am seeing a place where in 6 months, we're going to go out and have these discussions again, and we're going to learn a lot from what's happened over the last 6 months, right? This is a new program, not only for DDS, for the state. This is the first time a Medicaid program is allowing the ability for legal guardians and parents of school-age children to be paid, to provide supports and be paid for those supports. So it really is new. It's really new for us. It's really new for the state, and we're going to learn together. So thank you so much. It was so nice meeting everyone. And Stacy, maybe we can connect tomorrow morning just to exchange some information.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Krista.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right,
Thank you.
our next item is Regional Director's update.
So I would like to first introduce Brian Gresco, who is joining us this evening. He is an education service specialist, and I wanted him to provide some information in regards to Project Search. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian to let him provide you information about Project Search.
Sure. Well, like Krista said, I'm also happy to be here. It's my first time, I think, talking with this specific group. I've talked to other RAC groups, but this is, I think, my first time talking with the North group. So if I haven't met you yet, just wanted to introduce myself again. Brian Gresco. I'm with the Employment Day Services unit at DDS, and I always feel a need to put in a pitch for our unit because a lot of people don't know that we exist. So we do have a dedicated unit just for Employment Day Services. And there are 4 of us in the state. Each one, we have somebody serving each region, and then we have somebody assigned to central office as well. And the course of our work, we really oversee a lot of the services that are provided, particularly any day services and especially employment services. So if you ever have questions or you need clarification or just to bounce things off of somebody, we are available. We're a resource for provider agencies, for individuals and families, for our colleagues at DDS and in other state agencies. And we oversee a lot of different projects. We oversee a lot of initiatives, grants, things like that, that really move forward the discussion of employment. So one of the things that falls under our purview and my falls with me specifically is a program called Project Search. I'm actually glad this is a small group so we can have maybe a little bit more informal conversation. Sometimes I'm talking in front of 100 and 200 people and it's more of me just talking, but yeah, feel free to raise your hand. Ellen.
I'm actually in one of your projects.
Oh, you are? Which one?
But I am graduating in a few weeks.
Okay.
June 1st. Thank you. I am actually out of Mark Inc. of Manchester.
Okay.
I work with Alex Ling. What's his last name?
Yep.
Or something.
Yeah, you'll have your graduate. Is your graduation on the 7th?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. My daughter's graduation, her preschool graduations that day. Otherwise, I'd be there. But
Yeah.
we will. My colleague is going to be there, so we're really excited for the graduation. Yeah, that's
And
really
we
good.
and we also are having we started September something.
5th.
Yep.
My mom
So,
is on too, so
oh, okay. Are you happy with the Did you have a good experience with the program?
I learned a lot. I grew a lot. I actually learned time management very well. I actually got into my field that I want to get in. I want to get into basketball and PT. So
Nice. Very good.
yeah. So
No, and you brought up some really good point. You kind of beat me to the punch a little bit because you.
sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm happy you did. I'm really happy that you're in Project Search, and it's just to some of the points that Ellen brought up. Project Search is it's been around since the mid-90s. In a nutshell, started in Cincinnati, in a hospital there, and basically what it is it's since that time it's really grown. It's in 48 states. There's 730 something programs
I think that's what
around the country. They're in about 10 other countries, so they're abroad. And what it really is, in essence, is an internship program it's a very immersive internship program that allows individuals to get into industry sectors that have high yield potential for employment. So typically what happens is Project Search programs will have a licensee in Connecticut. It just so happens that most of the licensees for Project Search programs are DDS providers. So we mentioned Mark of Manchester, there's Mark Community Resources, FAVAR, there's a number of different programs that hold licenses. And what they do is they link up with a host business. And as I mentioned, they tend to be like bigger industries. So
we're
you're looking
actually
at
out of Hartford Hospital
Hartford Hospital. Yep.
and Goodwin.
Yes. So you hit two of the big the two big ones. Hospitals and universities tend to be really good um, places for Project Search because they have a lot of employees, so they're always looking for help, and they also have a lot of different departments. So there's a lot of different work skills that can be worked on at any given time. I know, like at Hartford Hospital, for example, they have internships in different departments like environmental services. They have linens. They have. I know there's
We
a
actually didn't have that this year.
Oh, they
They
didn't.
had bake shop, gift shop,
Mhm.
um, the PT. I don't run it. I just attend it, so I don't really know.
Is the PT the patient transport?
No.
No. Okay. Okay. Fair
Physical
enough.
therapy.
Therapy. Got it. Even better. Okay.
And there was one food for health. So
Okay.
bake shop, gift shop, food for health, and physical therapy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. So
And
you
gift
can
shop.
get you can get a sense that there's a lot of different areas for exploration in terms of finding out what you like and what you don't like in terms of employment, and then a lot of room to develop and hone skills that are maybe specific to a certain job, but then are also can be transferable
That's what we're doing
to other
right now.
jobs. Yeah,
We're doing
and
classroom right now.
yeah, yep. So you're finishing up your last rotation, or you're done?
We're actually done with our last rotation. We're
Nice.
actually in what's it called? We have classroom work
Mhm.
until
Until
I
you
don't
until
know.
the graduation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had mentioned rotations, and you're hearing a little bit of our jargon. And what happens is basically what Project Search is really intended for transition age youth. So we're looking at, your transition age students. So your 18 to 22-year-olds. That's what Project Search was designed for, to work primarily with school districts. And if you look across the country, most interns for Project Search come from school districts. They also come from VR agencies. With kind of like the DD agencies in support in Connecticut, we're inverse, working on it. But as things are currently stand, we have most of the interns coming from from DDS. So our population tends to be a little bit older because it's that 22 and older population. But people tend to think that Project Search in Connecticut is a DDS program. It's not. And that's part of whenever I talk to folks, I always want to stress that it's not a DDS program. It's a program that DDS supports, but it's not the only access point to the program. Project Search is listed on State Ed website as a transitional vocational program. So school districts can refer individuals as part of their educational transition programming. Norwalk Public Schools actually holds a license for Project Search, which means that they actually fund and have kind of embedded Project Search into their larger transition programming. And because of that, Project Search models a school year. So we had mentioned kind of beginning in September, and then there's a graduation end of May, early June, depending on the program. So it's a 9-month program, and we mentioned rotations, and there are 3 rotations, which means there's 3 kind of like micro internships. So interns have an opportunity to really get into 3 different departments and learn skill sets in each of them. The program is really designed to be very immersive. So there's no like clustering. You don't have 3 or 4 interns, in a department doing the same thing. If you're in a department, that's your internship area. That's your space. And you're working most of the day in that department, relying on natural resources, your colleagues, things like that. It's a very immersive program. And at the end of the 9 months, hopefully you're getting close to finding employment opportunities. A lot of host business will hire some of the individuals, and for those that don't get hired by the host business, the Project Search program will work with them even after graduation to secure employment. And I do see a hand up. So Susan, you have a question.
Just a add on, more of a feedback. First off, it sounds like a great program, and people like Ellen deserve to have absolutely that opportunity. I think my question is really to Stacy. We have a whole group of people who are not as functional and are trained during their school years to do vocational, to get vocational training. Is there a similar project that we could bring to Connecticut for our more lower functioning clients?
I think
I think
you're mute.
okay. I think that Brian can share with me, agree with me that we have been having discussions in regards to the challenges surrounding employment for individuals that have different challenges. Because I think that a reoccurring topic we've had in our group here is about those challenges of our individuals trying to find employment and meaningful things to do. So we're acknowledging that it's difficult, and we're working to gather more information and what providers would need from us to help support this, moving forward to deal with these challenges. But I don't know if Brian, you have anything additional to add to that, but we do
I always have
recognize
something
that.
additional to add. Yeah, put my foot fully into my mouth. Yeah, it is Stacy had mentioned that that is a priority area for the department, and specifically for the Employment Day Services Unit. We do have recurring meetings just dedicated to our high needs folks, and particularly around employment. One of the areas that we're looking at, and this is actually part of our STEP initiatives, and I'm tied directly to it, so you can point right at me, is developing alternate internship programs for folks beyond the scope of Project Search. Project Search is, again, it's a great program. I think, at your point, Susan, is it profiles for a certain subset of our population, but it's not necessarily for everyone. And what we need to do is pave a pathway for anyone who's interested in employment, that they can have. Uh, we provide inroads for them to get to achieve their goals, and one of those things
Okay.
is, yeah, one of those things is internships. And we're tasked with developing things that, if we have folks with higher needs who have interest in taking on internships, we need to figure out how to make that achievable. So those are actually conversations that are happening actively. We're very much involved with those conversations. So you could feel free to reach out. I mean, if you have specific questions, uh, you know, I wish things could move quicker. Things tend to move at a somewhat of never at the pace we want to. But I'm actually pretty pleased with some of the foundation that's being laid right now. I'm really optimistic about creating things for them. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and you can feel free to reach out to myself at any time, if you want any updates or anything like that, or if you want to have conversations, I can do that as well, or point you in the direction of where those conversations are had, because there's always room for input from our families. I know, Kim, you have your hand up too.
Right. I was under the impression that customized employment would be more for people who had more challenges. Being able to look at each individual in
Mhm.
what their interest is. So, I mean, that is definitely an option. But I think if you could like partner that with more of an internship situation, that would be really good.
Yeah, no, it's a good point about customized employment. That's exactly why we've put so much emphasis on customized employment. And even customized employment has its lane. So we're trying to think of just different strategies and approaches, because nothing's cookie cutter. And as with project search, with customized employment, um, I think it's certainly a tool in our toolbox. I think we're not. I don't think we're ever going to be satisfied that we've done enough. So we want to make sure that if we can create other supports for folks, that we do that. And customized employment is actually, whenever I think about project search, I find a lot of parallels with customized employment, because project search is when they're in rotations, they're not doing a specific job, they're taking different components of the jobs that are in that department. And it is kind of like job carving in a sense, in terms of skill development. And when I'm talking about specifically about some of the things that we're taking on, I am specifically talking about internships. So customized employment, yes, maybe some other things that we could look into, but specifically internships is something that is noted in our STEP initiative, and that's something we're working on.
I think one of my frustrations with Ellen's situation was making sure that we were really listening to her and what she wanted. Working in the gift shop, she's done that a lot. I think when they were able to open up physical therapy for her, they were listening. That
Good.
was what she wanted. So.
And it should be guided by. So
I agree.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear if that wasn't the case at first. I'm glad to hear that um, she was able to get into an area of interest in the program. I'm not really sure of the specifics, if it's just a matter of they didn't have enough to pride. I don't know what the specifics were, but I'm glad to hear that she got into the PT. So, you know, and these are opportunities that, you know, Project Search kind of opens the doors for opportunities that I think erstwhile might not have been available. We've had folks that have gotten trained in electronic health records, which is phenomenal. I'm not. That's what my wife does, and she talks, and she's in the other room during the day, and she's talking. I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about. But there's some really nuanced and sophisticated things that are being done with some of the Project Search programs. That I think that's something that really resonates with me when I see things like that, or when I can see there's a program down in Middlesex Hospital, and we actually had a young man who had graduated. He's working 40 hours now. He has full benefits. He doesn't. He's phenomenal. I've actually had him talk. There was a conference last year in May, and I actually brought him along with me. I was like, you got to talk, and I mean. He wouldn't talk before, and then he gets in front of a room 150 people in a big ballroom, and he's talking, and he's just charming the crowd, and you know, he did such a good job. But what's interesting is he's actually going out. He's going to be speaking at we have a conference in Albuquerque in July. He's actually flying out, and he's with the staff from our community resources, and he's going to be doing an abstract. So I mean, that's an extreme case, you know, situation. But I think that with a lot of the Project Search folks, that individuals that go through the program, just with anything, we're not just talking about employment. We're talking about employment, but we're actually talking about broadening horizons, right?
Yes.
And self-awareness and self-concept, those kinds of things, they have a
Right.
ripple effect. You know, I've had parents who have said, you know, she got a job, but now she's talking about moving out. She wants to
Yay.
get you, and you're kind of crying and everything, and you're like, yeah, this is about employment, but it's about so much more.
Well,
So
independence, we've seen a huge growth in independence and
and
pushing us away.
yeah, and you know, and I'm running up against the clock. I'm eating up all
Oh,
of
I'm sorry.
Stacy's time, but no. I don't mind, but I could talk for hours about this stuff, and you know, it's always about pushing the envelope. You know, 15 years ago, the things we're doing today were things that were unimaginable 15 years ago. I get excited thinking about where we're going to be, you know, 2035. What is this going to look like? And the things that look like huge barriers today are going to be little bumps in the road. But that is why it's so important for like people to hold state agencies like DDS accountable, to make sure that we're running into brick walls for you folks, to make sure that you have everything that you need, because that's what we all deserve. But that's you know, that's the level of accountability that we should be holding ourselves to.
I see you have two questions.
Sure.
Yep. Yep.
Tammy?
Yeah, at the beginning, Brian, you mentioned that your work with employment and day programs. So now the internships and all that are, I'm assuming, part of the employment. What do you do as far as day programs, like for some individuals that aren't up for an internship or employment, but really could use more than what they have right now?
You know, I mean, there are options. We have folks that are in, you know, our DSOs, that falls, you know, into our involvement as well. Their day service options. So you might have individuals that are doing, you know, in the DSOs, not necessarily seeking employment, but they are afforded day services. We have, you know, we have our individualized day, non-vocational options. So people who might want to self-direct, or who are doing their own independent things, but they're not necessarily interested in pursuing employment at this time. We do have options for them.
Right, but do you have any like guides for, say, agencies or for whoever to guide them past the have the people sit there and do nothing type stuff?
I'll put it I'll put it this way. And
I'm sorry to put it that way, but
no, I appreciate your candor. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of discussions about actively. I mean, my unit's involved with. There's like that old tired line of reimagining things, reimagining DSOs. But I think there's ongoing. There are conversations again that are happening that, I'm hope about addressing that very concern that you have, that you don't want your loved one just going into a facility and they're coloring for 8 hours, and what is the definition of meaningful day, right? What can are the DSOs, if we're not pursuing employment, what is the definition of a meaningful day, and how do we help people achieve that, right? So that is part of we're involved with the Employment Day Services Unit. Love to have I could certainly have a conversation. I could actually introduce you if you want. You want to just have a meeting with my unit too. We could talk about that as a little bit more as well. Stacey, give everyone my contact number. I have a big bullseye on my. So I don't even try to hide anymore. I just like, come find me. So, but we could certainly talk about some of the stuff that's going on with day service options, because there is some movement about what's that going to look like moving forward. So nothing's decided yet, but that is another area of where people are focusing on.
Shannon?
Hi, thanks. So this may or may not be the right place to ask this, and I apologize because I think you all probably know the answer to this, but I'm sort of in the beginning of my learning curve. Could someone just explain really briefly what is customized employment?
Oh, good.
I'm
Where's
trying to
Trevor?
track the different
Yes.
acronyms and phraseology, but that one
So to make it very simple, so what happens is we have folks, individuals that will we have different support services. We have group supported employment, we have individualized supported employment. We have different ways that we can support individuals, right, that as they're seeking to get gainfully employed. What happens is sometimes we have individuals that they've tried some of the traditional services that we have to offer, and for one reason or another it just hasn't worked out. So one of the things that we can do is we have a service called customized employment, and basically what it is it's a very I'll call it intensive because I don't want to scare you off, but it's a very immersive program where they do a real deep dive, a discovery process with the individual. They get to know the individual. They get to this is provided by qualified DDS providers, and these specific providers have to be trained in customized employment. And there's a whole training that actually DDS is kind of put to the forefront. We handle a lot of that, but they do a discovery process. They learn about the individual, their interests, things like that, and then what happens is that provider will then link with local businesses and things like that to try to create an opportunity where they can carve out a new job for somebody that's custom made. So you have, I don't know, a mom and pop shop working, I don't know, they're a bakery. Now you might have talk to the owner and you can say, well, I have the person who's working the front, I have the person that's working the back, I have the person who's making the muffins, something like that. And they could say, well, this is somebody that an individual, we'll call him Joe, and these are his interests, these are his strengths. Is there kind of room for a good fit? And maybe Joe can do a little bit of everything and take a little bit off everyone's plate and create a new position for him. And that's kind of how it works. Is then it's kind of creating a specific job that really profiles to what the individual strengths are and what their interests are and what the needs of the business are. It's a pretty involved program. So
got it. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any more questions for Brian? Thank you so much, Brian. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I'm putting in the chat just a link for the the project search on our DDS website. I'll put the link there. And then there's also a link with a project search brochure, which is great for families to peruse through. And if anyone needs to reach out to me, any one of us, about anything employment, feel free to do so.
Thank you so much, Brian. I really
thank you.
appreciate
No
your
problem.
time. I really do.
All right. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
I literally could listen to Brian talk all day. He's a wealth of knowledge, and I just enjoy working with him. So we'll definitely have to have him back in the future. Okay, and I'll just touch upon a couple of my updates. Krista had mentioned that we had the stakeholders virtual forums. So I would like to provide the dates for you all. If you are able to join us, that would be great. So next week, May 20th, 5 p.m. to 6:30, and also Tuesday, May 21st, 5 to 6:30. These forums consist of the commissioner and the deputy commissioner providing updates, and there will be legislative updates and also presentations such as workforce development and what Krista had shared, the parent and guardian caregiver. She goes into a summary in regards to that as well. So again, the dates are May 20th and May 21st, 5 to 6:30. The other thing, I wanted to remind everyone to reserve the date May 23rd at 5:30. We had discussed this at our previous meeting, so I just wanted to remind you that that's the statewide RACs plus the council is a special meeting that we scheduled in order to give our groups the opportunity to speak to GTI. The new fiscal intermediary for self-direction, they will provide a presentation, and we can also ask the various questions that you may continue to have, any concerns to share. So please be there May 23rd, 5:30. And you know, we're DDS, we're continuously working closely with GTI, and we're sharing your concerns, and we have an internal system to make sure that your concerns are provided to them in a timely manner and that you're receiving timely responses as well. Shannon?
Sorry, are those all online?
Oh yes, yeah, sorry if I didn't state that. Virtual, yes, those forums are virtual.
Okay, and we get the login.
I can have Ether send out the email for you to easily have the access to the link to log in.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any more questions? Okay, so that's May 23rd, 5:30 for our GTI special meeting. And that was, again, planned because each regional director expressed that their RAC, councils had a lot of concerns and questions. So that's why this meeting is scheduled. So please, attend if you're able to, if you're available. Also, last meeting I had shared that we had our individual and family service program managers looking at locations for the Transition Life Skills College. So at this time, planning is still being done, and interns were hired to assist with this project to help with the development of the curriculum and research. And we're really excited that this is going to come to fruition. So stay tuned. I'll continue to bring you updates as they develop, but the Transition Life Skills College will is being worked on. And basically, the curriculum will focus on individuals building skills to live independently, as independently as possible in the community. Shannon? Oh, that's a residual hand.
My bad. Sorry.
Oh, no
Thank you.
problem. No problem. No problem. Let me see. Just quick in the.
Stacy, I
Yes.
have a question.
Mhm.
Is there an age range for the Life Skills College?
Honestly, all the criteria, curriculum, and everything has not been developed yet.
Okay.
I think that there was discussion about, you know, aging out and from school and transitioning to this
Okay.
next phase of training, but that's not cut in stone. So
Okay.
stay tuned as we, go further down the development road. I'll
Okay.
share information. Oh, I also want to share, North Region, we hired a new self-advocate. Her name is Shantae Taylor. She'll be stationed out of the East Hartford office here. And her supervisor, she'll be in the quality division. So her supervisor will be Sheila Swedler, who you met at our last meeting. And that'll make 3 in total. And we still have to post for additional self-advocate coordinators. So stay tuned for that. I'll share that as that comes up. And Central Office hired a new division director of investigations, Kendris Lally. She has worked for the department, but this is a promotion. She will be supervising the investigators and abuse and neglect liaisons. So the regional directors were collaborating with her to just take a look at the workflow and, make improvements as she sees fit. And, that division, as you all know, works very hard with investigations, and we just want to improve our systems. Susan?
What is her name again?
Kendris Lally, Kendras Lally.
Lally.
Correct.
Okay. And how would we find her phone number?
I can send that. I can ensure that that's in the minutes or send that out in an email.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Oh, well, I just want to say that I know that this is our last meeting before our June, July, and August, our summer break. So hopefully in the fall, maybe we can, work to have a one in-person meeting to see each other. But we could, I'll leave that up to, Kim to kind of generate that conversation further, but just something to think of in the fall. Maybe we could get together before the winter.
Yes.
And also the last thing I see Adriana on here. I did share May events for the Connecticut Family Support Network. So I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add to that, Adrian, before I relinquish back to Kim.
I apologize for being late. I always love these meetings. Thank you, Stacy, for sharing our information. No, please just, we're always updating. You can always find our events on our Facebook page under events tab. All the information, law, registration, everything. So I just welcome everyone to always visit because we're always having new topics, and feel free to email me on anything that you're curious to have a workshop in, or if there is a support group you feel in your area, have a parent leader that we could partner with and start, growing our support groups. I'm always open and willing to support community any way we can. So I welcome all input. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. And I also wanted to share with everyone, Kim and I really would like to, make good use of your time here. So if there's anything ever that you have topics that you would like for us to bring forward, please, feel free to contact Kim, contact myself, and we will do our best to get the right people here. I think that, Krista and Brian were great, and it was a lot of information. And please, definitely sign on to our virtual forums, because I know that was the second time I heard it, and I always pick up, more. It sticks more as you hear it, additional time. So please sign on to the virtual forums if you're able to. And it's always a pleasure to, talk to the commissioner and deputy commissioner. They are, they give of their time because they love to hear directly from everyone, parents, guardians, providers, our RAC, council, definitely. And I see hands up, Susan. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, hear you.
Sorry, that was a layover.
Oh, okay. All right. Hey,
You
Rick.
answered all my questions. I appreciate it.
Great. Rick?
Yeah, so Kendris was previously the Director of Investigations. So how is this position different from the position she had before, other than she got a promotion?
It's a promotion and it's more oversight. It's a higher level position. It's more oversight. She will be supervising more of the whole division. The abuse and neglect liaisons used to be supervised regionally.
Yep.
And it's going to be great that's going to transition directly to Kendris, because everything they do, involves her division.
Okay. I decided to ask. She certainly has been with the department almost as long as Claudia was with the department. So she has she was with P&A before, but she certainly is very knowledgeable.
Yes, she is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. Any more questions for me? Feel free at any time. I know that we have this break over the summer. Feel free to contact me for anything. I have an open door policy. I'll make sure that you have my telephone number and work cell phone number, and I'll have Ether share that information with you all, just in case anything comes up and that you need to touch base with. Okay, Kim, back to you.
All right. I also feel the same way as Stacy. If you ever have any questions or concerns, you can definitely email me or give me a call. I'm available. The next item is legislative update, although at the forums, I'm hearing they're going to be doing some of that at that meeting. So did you have something?
I guess I will mention a couple of things and
Okay.
leave the rest to Kevin Bronson on the at the forums. I don't want to grab his thunder. Good news and bad news. The good news is that the legislature did not adopt any of Governor Lamont's recommendations for the 2025 revisions. So all the work we put in last year to get improvements in funding and some dedicated money for the waiting list still are in place for 2025. The bad news is that we were unsuccessful in getting additional funds to further improve the wages and benefits for our workers. So whatever we got last year is what we're going to be dealing with for this coming year. I guess another disappointment was the failure of the legislature, the Senate in particular, to adopt the changes that were made to Senate Bill 432, which required a review by OPM, the Office of Policy and Management, of the overall nonprofit contracting process. The industry and outsiders, and I know many of us feel this way, feel that there are efficiencies that could be gained that would benefit our family members, the providers, and the state if we looked at things kind of fresh and came up with some consolidation of processes and so forth. I'm sure automation is another area of interest. Anyway, there was a very bad amendment that was adopted in the House at 11 o'clock on the last day, and it basically gutted the bill. And then the Senate never took it up, so even the skeleton of the bill was not passed. And so I know the providers and the advocacy groups. I won't speak for you, Adriana, but I'm sure you're in there on this as well. Is that will be another effort for next year. The other bad news or possible bad news is this past year, DDS did not spend approximately $50 million of its budget, including 16 million for the state sector, and 24 million a day programs and 8 million for residential. Altogether, it's about 50 million round number. And I only assume that the reason for that is staffing, is that there are certainly people who want services that we would love to give them the services, but there isn't enough staff to take them into any of these programs. So I'm hoping that we are able to do something about that going strong into this year. The governor has expanded authority to cut budgets or move budgets around between agencies in this new budget. And so that's something all of us will have to be watching for. The changes will have to be approved by a group called the FAC, the Finance Advisory Council, which is made up of legislators and the constitutional officers. But basically, some feel that the governor will be able to make any changes that he wants without the full legislature approval. So anyway, so we have to fight for a new budget for 2 years and keep an eye on that, plus whatever other initiatives that people come up with. So any questions on the legislation? There is a DDS bill also, which I'm sure Kevin will explain. It's mostly technical. The ombudsman has now been changed to the office of the ombudsman. There was no fiscal note, so presumably at some point that means there will be others assisting Shannon with her work. But it sounds like there's nothing imminent for that. And there were some technical changes to other areas as well within DDS, mostly recognizing things that have already been done as a policy matter. There is now an Office of Oral Health. We've had an Office of Oral Health, although not officially with that title, for many years, and they're getting some increased authority to expand dental services using students. So anyway, Kevin will fill in the rest. Anybody have any questions? Sue, is that for me?
Actually, it's more for Stacy. Stacy, has there been, like, do we know why $50 million that was available to be used wasn't used?
I think Rick summed it up quite well. There's a lot of exploration that goes into our, individuals and families searching for day programs and different providers for supports. And a lot of providers didn't have the capacity to take individuals that needed a substantial amount of supports, and they might be a 2-to-1 or 1-to-1. So it's a time, as you know, because we've been involved in RFPs and searching, that's really what the delay usually is. It's not that we don't provide an allocation, it's the search and the finding the folks and the staff and the agencies with the capacity.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I will just comment, if that's possible, that when the legislature provides resources, I know Kathy Austin was very big at this on this the last biennium budget when it came in, is she wants to know when she's co-chair of appropriations for like the last 10 years since Beth Bai got picked to do early childhood. And she wants to know, and the appropriations committee wants to know, is if we give you the money, we're giving you the money to spend it, and don't have us give you money and not spend it, because we've determined that it's a priority. We're allocating resources, and we did help to balance the budget for the current year by using our surplus against the deficiency of other state agencies, of which a big beneficiary was UConn. So anyway,
Yeah, so believe me, it's
Annette,
not a
is
lack
that
of
for me?
trying.
Yeah. Oh, Annette?
Annette?
Yeah, hi, this question is for Rick. Rick, what were you saying about the oral care? What were they trying to expand on? You were talking about
I'm
oral
sorry, what
health
are they
care.
trying to expand?
Yeah, for the oral health care, what are they doing? Are you saying the
They're
oral health
getting,
care?
the legislation says they're adding student dentists somehow, getting them more involved in treating our individuals. Now, I know at UConn, I guess it's Clinic 5 is where most of our guys go, and Clinic 5, I think, is all student dentists. But I know particularly when it comes to procedures that need general anesthesia, some people are finding an extremely long wait for that. And I don't know if this will do anything for that or not, but if you want more information, I'm sure Kevin will provide it next week, or you can read the bill, which is Senate Bill 15, House Bill 5293, as well as the DDS direct changes.
So Rick, was that bill
So,
passed or that's going to?
yeah, that bill passed. What the legislature does is DDS had 2 or 3 bills. They combine them together and pass them as one. So that did pass, and the Office of the Ombudsman passed, and a lot of these other technical changes passed. Kim, there is one thing that affects the project you talked about last month, and that is how the allocation of resources for supportive housing is to be done. I guess it's now going to be done within Department of Housing, and they've revised the priority so that the priority will go to projects with DDS developers, DDS attached developers. They don't have to develop the project, but they have to be identified, and that have no more than 25% of the project being for our guys. So
Right.
I did read the minutes from last month, and that was, sorry I missed that. It was a very interesting presentation, but this comes off in another couple of weeks and things will start going back to normal.
Yay.
And just to add to
Thank
that,
you.
DDS, we also have a dental clinic in Norwich as well.
Yeah. In Norwich, Southbury, and is there still one in Fairfield County? There used to be one at the regional center down there.
I'm not
I
aware
don't
of
know
that
if it's
one.
still there or not. Okay, so
I'm not aware.
and
I will
there
follow up.
is and there is a woman in central office who, if you ever have trouble getting dental services, her name escapes me, but
Isabel
she is
Palvermacher.
excellent. Yeah,
Isabella
she is excellent.
Palvermacher.
So yeah, and my son is now seeing a private dentist. His mother was able to find a private dentist that accepts Medicaid only. So that is working out well for him. He doesn't have major dental issues, but it's all the maintenance that's involved. So
Mm. All right. Well, thank you very much, Rick. That was very
thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
We'll see you all in the next I guess next week, one of these forums.
Yeah.
So
Good. Our next item is the open forum for public participation. Is there anyone? No, I guess not. So we have reached the adjournment of our meeting. So I'm assuming we're meeting again in September. So I hope everyone has a very fun and stays cool this summer. And hope to see you again in the fall. Thank
You
you.
want to tell them what we're doing this summer?
No, that's okay, Ellie.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much for all
Thank
your
It's been
you.
very
time.
informative. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you. Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good
Good night.
night.
Good night.